Hey guys, what's going on? Today we are going to be reviewing Chapter 6 of the manga Verses. So in Chapter 6, we're finally getting away from a lot of the dialogue that we were getting in Chapter 5, Part 1 and Part 2. It was a lot more kind of setting the premise, building up the plot with a lot of dialogue, with just little tidbits of action or progression of the fights that were going on between the enemies and such. But we're getting back into that. Today we actually get a little glimpse of the chieftain of the giants. So we're getting to know a lot more about the giants and what's going on with them, and we get a little glimpse of what the chieftain kind of looks like. So that's pretty awesome. We also get a little bit more background on Aryo, and he actually kind of shows that he actually has some combat skills. So we're going to get to see that too. So a lot of exciting stuff in this chapter. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. In the first page of chapter 6, we immediately see some of the giant wild creatures being smashed or crushed by a group of giants who are killing essentially anything that is alive in this area, and they're just kind of tossing their bodies on this tower of corpses. It's almost like the giants are going on a killing spree. So in page 2, we actually are getting to see a legion of giants. Now guys, I want to say something real quick about this panel. It is just so awesome. I mean, look at the giant in front. He's so massive, he's so muscular, he's so manly. He's got like 5 skulls on his hip, and then you got this army of giants right behind him who are essentially the same, man. They got war paint on them. They're just ready for battle. And I really like this panel right here. Now, if you look to the other side, we're actually getting to see the giants are actually collectively marching towards the same area, like they're being directed to. Now remember, the giants do know how to talk and they can formulate ideas and such, so it wouldn't be ridiculous to think that maybe they're being directed to do this. And then, yeah, it actually looks like they're marching towards the Fort for Humanity. For the third page, we're getting a look in the Fort for Humanity, and what we see Captain Kayla doing her morning workout. She has an amazing body. She has like perfect breasts. I really like that Kiyotaro Azuma and One include beautiful women in these manga because it just makes it a little bit more interesting, right? Especially when they try to create almost like a love connection between two characters. Page 4, we get a look at Aryo. So he comes out to basically try to court Kayla. He sees her, he thinks she's hot, he comes and he brings her a flower. Now, Kayla kind of looks at the flower like, what the hell is this? And then Aryo puts on the misty eyes and he's trying to be all sexy. And he says that the flower is actually a mark of their friendship. Kind of weird though how he thinks they have a friendship because they don't even know each other. This is actually the first time they're having a conversation together. So again, Kayla's just kind of looking at the flower like, this is stupid. In page 5, we get Aryo asking Kayla if she has actually gotten to see what it's like to fight a demon king. And the reason he asked this is because he wants to start to brag about how he has fought a demon king in the past, and as she can see, he doesn't have any injuries like Hollow does. Hollow has scars all over his face, and now he lost an arm, and Aryo has no injuries. He's still pretty, so to speak. So he's trying to brag here, which is very suspicious because I did think that it was a little odd that he also fought a demon king but doesn't have any scars like Hollow does. Kind of makes me think, did you really fight a demon king? So he wants to kind of push the point of he's a hero and she must not have heroes on her world, so she should be very impressed with him. Then he goes on to try to explain the meaning of the flower. If a guy likes a girl, he gives her a flower. But instead, Kayla puts the flower in her mouth and attempts to eat it and tells Aryo that on her world, such things like flowers are very nutritious and they're meant for eating. For page 6, Hollow comes out and asks Aryo what he's doing, but then he realizes that he's trying to pick up on Kayla. So then he goes on to say, you haven't changed, you always trying to run some game on some hoes. That's what he's doing. So then Aryo asks Hollow what he's doing up early, but Hollow responds by saying, what are you doing up so early? You just returned from a super long journey, and yet you're one of the first people up. And he goes on to answer Aryo by stating that he couldn't sleep and he couldn't calm down because he's trying to wrap his brain around how they can successfully pull off this mission to have the enemies fight each other. On page 7, Aryo begins to ask Hollow about his arm and his broken sword and ask him, so you actually got to fight a Demon King. So as Hollow begins to remember his fight with the Demon King Jachi, he starts to sweat profusely. He needs to create space between himself and his shirt. And we get another good look at the Demon King Jachi. And from this view, again, he just looks really cool. I'm really in love with his design. He just looks very menacing and powerful. But then Hollow asks Aryo, did you get to fight a Demon King? And apparently the Demon King that Aryo was supposed to fight was the 19th Demon King, Naruto. And then Aryo gets very nervous, so to speak, and he goes, me too? Oh yeah, I lost as well. And he's acting very fidgety, which is very suspicious. On page 8, we got Aryo continuing to act nervous and saying, oh man, I shouldn't have made a promise I couldn't keep. It's crazy that even with all of our training and us being heroes, we still have to pick our battles. We can't just go and defeat anybody. And then Hollow says, hey, you're still alive, and as long as we're both alive, we can do something next time. Then he says, for now, let's find how we can be of use. Aryo just looks kind of nervous, like, dude, I don't want to do anything else. For page 9, we kind of have Aryo looking down, almost like he feels guilty, is the feeling I'm kind of getting here. But he says, more than me, it's you who hasn't changed, Hollow. So, and I think he's referring to Hollow's optimism and his heroism. He's a true hero. And I think that for some reason, Aryo doesn't feel like a hero, but he recognizes that Hollow is a true hero. And Kayla, she overhears all of this. And I thought that from the previous chapter, Kayla's suspicions were kind of high. Once Aryo came back to the fort and she realized, oh, he was supposed to fight a Demon King, but he doesn't look like he fought a Demon King. So her suspicions are up there. And then now we get cut back to the council talking about things in the Great Hall. Again. Now we're on to page 10. Now I'm very excited to talk about this one because we're getting a different feel other than a powerful being, right? We got a person from the curse world is starting to explain the sudden sickness that has overcame the king of the magic forces world. And he basically states that your king fell ill from the curse. It leaked from our world. And one of your wizards probably picked it up while exploring outside. And then Zabi asked this individual from the curse world, I guess his name is Bass. He asked him, how do you treat it? And he kind of chuckles a bit and he says, you can't. And he's like, that kind of sucks, huh? He's like, yeah, welcome to my fucking world. And he's like, you know what, the most you can do is just quarantine him, you know, to keep it from spreading. And then, to make factors worse, the guy next to Zabi, his name is Pio, and he is from the parasite world. He lets Zabi know, hey, I don't mean to kick you while you're down, but to add to that, we should probably start to watch out for the invasion of the parasites from my world. Then he goes on to explain that, hey man, it takes nothing for these parasites to latch on to a human, invade their body and their mind, and then next thing you know, we're just being swarmed with them. A place this small will get overran very easily. And then Zabi's like, dude, are you freaking kidding me? He's like, now we got enemies that we can't even see. You know, never mind for a second the enemies that are ultra powerful and they're these almost like gods. Now we have these enemies that are basically organisms that are killing people. This is a really cool aspect because this is a major part of life that people do have to watch out for. Like, we can catch a bacterial infection or a virus infection that can disable us for the rest of our lives, or it could even kill us, you know? So this is like a real world thing that the author one has added to this story that makes it even more interesting. Because one thing I'm also wondering is how will these enemies, such as the curse and the parasites, how will those affect the other enemies, such as the giants or the robots or the demons? Are the robots immune to it because they're not living creatures? Or is there still a way that the curse or the parasites can invade the robots? The demons and such are already evil, but maybe they would be even worse if they get overcame by the curse or the parasite. So this is crazy, bro. This is nuts. And it's really exciting because I really want to see where the author one goes with this. On page 11, Zabi calls Hollow, Aryo, Captain Kayla, and various others to another meeting. And he goes on to say, hey, I'm sorry to call you guys again, but we have to have another meeting to kind of just re-go over what we discussed yesterday. So then Zabi recaps and says, so the initial plan is we're going to run, hide, and just kind of wait for an opportune time to do something. And that is also corresponding with Commander Garrett's carefully observation plan. And he says, well, first we need to discuss how to stay alive. But then Aryo kind of thinks to himself for a second, and then he says, hey, I don't know if we're going to be able to patiently wait it out and have careful observation. He thinks that's going to be pretty useless. And then Zabi and Hollow are like, what are you saying, Aryo? What's going on? All right, guys, so now we're getting into the juicy stuff. Page 12, Aryo says that he was unable to use teleportation magic. And that is his excuse as to why he had to walk all the way back to the Fort for Humanity. But he says on his way back to the Fort for Humanity, he came across these huge towers of corpses. And walking away from these towers, he saw what he describes as monsters shaped like humans with huge bodies. And he's describing the giants. So he saw these giants walking away from all of this death. And he saw that they were killing any living thing in the vicinity. And they were building these mountains of flesh and meat. And then he said they formed groups. And after they formed groups, they started heading in the direction of the Fort for Humanity. So then Aryo goes on to say that there were at least 50 of these giants. And there was one in particular that he remembered that was even taller than the rest of them. He was at least 20 meters tall. Now, for those of you who do not know what meters are in feet, 20 meters is 65.6 feet tall. And he said at this rate of their walking speed, they will be at the base probably within the next 2 days. He said if we just stay here, then the giants are going to arrive and they're going to massacre everyone here. On page 14, we get the council just yelling at Aryo like, dude, what the hell? Say that sooner. Why are you waiting to tell us right now? So then we fast forward to Paka sound asleep over some crates, and then out of nowhere, he gets snatched up or maybe even hit. Yeah, it looks like he get hit by Simone's sexy ass again, and she grabs him and says, Paka, you gotta wake up. We're in trouble. So now we go to outside. Simone brings Paka to these council members, and he's like, what the hell? Like a group of giants are coming? And he's like, you, and he's pointing at Aryo. He's like, why the hell wouldn't you tell us this yesterday? But then Aryo goes on to answer Paka and says, what difference would it have made if I told you guys yesterday as opposed to today? And he basically says, look, if I would have told you guys yesterday, everyone would have been making bad decisions because everyone was tired and confused. And he knew that they weren't going to leave or anything. He knew everybody was going to rest at the fort. So he's saying that I thought it would have been a better idea to allow everyone to get a good night's sleep instead of worrying about this. And then I figured I would tell you guys today when you guys were plenty rested and we can come up with the logical plan. Now, yes, it is kind of fucked up that he didn't tell them the previous day, because technically they would have had more time to come up with the plan. However, it was actually really considerate of him to say, hey bro, I just wanted everybody to get a good night's sleep. I didn't want to worry anybody, because at the end of the day, there was nothing we were going to be able to do about it in the moment. Like, the most that could have happened by me telling you guys yesterday is you just would have had a little bit more time to plan, but people would have lost sleep over it. So I actually, at first I was thinking the same thing, like, what the fuck, bro? Why wouldn't you tell them before? But when he explains why he didn't, it's actually kind of like, okay, fair enough. That's actually a really good reason not to tell people. Aryo asks him, he says, you got some good night's sleep, didn't you? And then Pac is like, dude, fuck you. That's not the point. You know, like, you need to say something. And Zabi tends to agree with Pac. He's like, yeah, you shouldn't keep information like that to yourself. And then Aryo basically says, hey, I'll keep that in mind for next time. But Hollow actually looks at Aryo again as not just a hero, but an exceptional hero. Like, even in the face of all this danger, he's like still kind of keeping his cool, and he's making decisions for the benefits of other people, not just himself. But then Kayla kind of shoots his bubble down by saying, like, honestly, it just kind of seems like he's being careless rather than considerate of other people. So again, Captain Kayla's suspicions are on high alert, bro. That she could tell something ain't right with this dude. So then Commander Garrus asks Simone if she has any ideas regarding the Giants, since they're very familiar with them. So Simone asks, I'm not sure who she's asking here, but she says, so you guys said that they were mountains of flesh, right? And then she says that is actually the Giants' markings. All right, so now we're getting a little bit more in depth with the Giants here. So Simone explains that when these Giants kill a bunch of creatures and they leave towers of corpses and markings of blood on mountains, that's their way to inform creatures of any kind that this is their territory. And she says they're very straightforward like that. But I just think that's them letting everyone else know, like, hey, we mean business. If you come in our shit, we're gonna fucking kill you, right? And then she goes on to say that in order to expand their territory, they began forming groups. So again, these Giants, they're not dumb, bro. They're actually collectively coming together and saying, let's work together as a team to accomplish a goal. This is very dangerous for anybody because it means they're going to work in unison. Now, she says that they started scattering these structures in all directions. So again, it's like they're trying to expand not just their territory, but like almost like an empire. It's like what we're kind of seeing with the Giants here is aggressive, very powerful cavemen understanding their own intellect and starting to become a civilization and become almost like an empire. And what they're trying to do now is they're trying to expand their empire. And then she also says that the one who commands them all is the Giants' tribal chief, the strongest giant, Gembok. And then we get a little look, it looks like, of Gembok's face right there. Now, of course, there's a lot of shadows, so we can't see a lot of detail. All we see is a lot of aggression. Page 18, we have Zabi thinking, unfortunately, their base is on the route of this group of giants. Kayla goes on to further add that there are no other dwellings for them to go to. There are no other refuges or infrastructures that people have in place for them to escape to. And then we have Commander Garrus adding to that by stating we have a lot of injured comrades, so it wouldn't be realistic for us to gather everyone and gather our belongings and just leave. So then you got Paka slamming his fist down on the table, very upset, very angry, and he says, we're not going to just stand here and wait to get killed. And he says that there's probably no way that Gembok, the chieftain of the giants, is among this group that's coming upon them. So he believes that they should get together and be prepared to face the giants head on in a fight. For page 19, we have our heroes kind of taking in Gembok's recommendation, but then we have Commander Garrus saying no. The chances of us winning a head-on confrontation with the giants is just too low. So then he goes on to say that they have no choice but to use Hollow's plan. And Hollow gets a little concerned. I think he gets a little confused and says, whoa, I don't know if I should be fighting on the front lines here. And his fairy tells him that's not what he's talking about, you moron. He said, you should just butt out of this. This conversation isn't for idiots. And then Zabi says, oh, what you mean is making our enemies fight each other. For page 20, Commander Garrus goes on to say, that's right, Hollow has showed us previously how this plan can work, so I thought it fitting to name this plan or strategy after Hollow. And then he has everyone take a look at the map. Now in the map, he shows through exploration from the wizards and Aryo, they were able to kind of create this map that shows where things are at in particular. And then he goes on to say that this is the route of the giants, and they're currently heading towards the magic forces world. But if we change their trajectory, they would then be heading towards a different world. For page 21, Commander Garrus goes on to say, beyond that point, her world's natural enemies. And then we have the humans from the neo-cruelty world who say that's where the new humanity resides. And one of the humans says that's an ingenious idea. Her name is Haji. And the reason she thinks this is an ingenious idea is even though these are giants, right? These massive, vastly strong creatures, she believes that the new humanity would be able to actually combat them because even though they resemble the appearance of old humanity, their intelligence and physical abilities are vastly better. So she believes that they would actually give the giants a good fight. Now, she's not necessarily hinting that they would destroy the giants or the giants don't have a chance, but she believes that this would be a good idea. Page 22, Commander Garrus says, as the giants see new humanity, they will not know the difference. So since they look alike, this is almost like the perfect setup. And he says this is how we're going to use the strategy. And then he goes on to say, we're going to have a small squad make contact with the advancing group of giants. We will tell them we intend to completely surrender. Then they will indicate that we're going to lead them to our base. And of course, rather than leading them to their actual base, they're going to take them to the new humanities area to fight the new humans. Page 23, we have our heroes kind of just thinking about this plan. Simone goes on to say, I see. Then she explains that the giants are quick to attack anyone that shows hostility. However, they do like to take docile or willing humans to work as slaves. And there's a possibility that they might want to come along to get more labor. But Brag Knight from the Giants World goes on to say that it depends on the mood, essentially, of the giants. It's a possibility that they may just kill anyone who approaches them without even listening to what they have to say. Then Commander Garrus goes on to say that this mission has considerable risk and he wants to know who would be willing to do it. And then we have a hand go up immediately. For page 24, we find out that that hand that was raised immediately belongs to none other than Hollow. He shouts, hey, I'll go. Let me do it. Because we all know that Hollow wants to be of use to everybody, even though he no longer has an arm and he's been defeated by the Demon King Jachi. So Aryo is kind of looking like, what? Like, you were so quick to raise your hand to go to this crazy mission? And then Zabi kind of looks at Hollow like, he's kind of thinking about it. But then you have Kayla saying, you don't really have the personality for this negotiating. And then she just goes on this parade of insults, just beating Hollow over the head, talking about that she understands he's feeling impatient, but this mission isn't really meant for people who can't control themselves. They don't know what his power level is because he kind of goes from being weak to being super strong. And then she goes on to talk about his mental, saying that he's immature and he's just not what they're looking for this mission right now. And then we get this really funny panel where Hollow goes to the corner essentially and he's soaking and he's kind of curled up and stuff, and Zabi's kind of looking after his brother saying like, man, you didn't need to go that hard on him. And then Kayla's just trying to defend her reasoning by saying, I'm sorry, but he's just unfit for this mission. For page 25, we got Hollow trying to plead his case again to Zabi and Kayla that all those things that Kayla might have said might be true, but he just wants to be useful to everyone. And he believes even if he uses himself as a sacrifice, he wants to do that in order to help the group. But then you get Aryo kind of getting a little upset and kind of biting down on his own teeth. And then he yells Hollow's name to get Hollow's attention. Then he catapults himself with extreme speed and power and he punches Hollow right in the face. And this is impressive. This is actually showing us that Aryo has some skill to him. You could see in the background the air force that he left behind in the ground from catapulting himself. And as he decks Hollow in the face, mean, he's contorting his face. He's got spit coming out. So we can see that this is a really hard punch. For page 26, we see that Aryo has launched Hollow towards this brick wall after punching him with such force. However, let's not forget that Hollow is a warrior. He is a hero. So he actually starts to flip in order to land on his feet against that then brick wall. However, when he looks up from his landing, he sees that he already has a sword directly in his face. And then Aryo goes on to say, if this was the past you would have avoided my punch. So he's letting Hollow know, like, dude, you're definitely not as strong as you used to be, because the past you would have been able to avoid my punch altogether. Then Hollow looks up to Aryo and he's just kind of confused a little bit. But then Aryo goes on to say that your body right now is battered and worn out, but as you can see, I'm unharmed. You stay back and I'll go. So Aryo, his concern and his gripe with Hollow is, stop sacrificing yourself all the time. Like, I understand that you're a hero, but you got to stop putting your life on the line. So the rest of the council kind of look upon this incident between Aryo and Hollow. They're learning about Aryo and they're learning about Hollow's current state as well. Now, I believe her name was Haji of the Neo-Cruelty world goes on to say that Aryo might certainly be qualified for such a mission, because one feature of New Humanity is that their appearance is young and beautiful. And the fact that Aryo has no injuries, but he could blend right into New Humanity without feeling out of place. So Zabi goes on to ask Aryo, hey, are you okay with this? Because this is a pretty dangerous mission. Aryo responds by saying, Zabi, I told you, if you need a hero, there's one right here. On page 29, Captain Kayla once again is really observing and kind of going back over things about Aryo. She remembers Aryo kind of bragging about him being uninjured even though he had fought a demon king. And he says the reason being is because I'm a hero. And then she also recalls hearing when Hollow had asked Aryo about his fight and he got real stuttery, he got real nervous and was like, oh yeah, I lost too. And she finds it strange because she has the same concern that I do. She says he is also a hero who fought a demon king just like Hollow. So it's strange. Why does he have no injuries? For page 30, Hollow kind of looks at Aryo again and is like, but Aryo, and Aryo says, Hollow, don't worry, just leave it to me.